Live from the WHBC Broadcast Center. Find out more about area businesses, agencies, and events.
It's what's going on right now.
This is Spotlight.
All right, it is a Monday morning, and it is a special edition of Spotlight this morning for a special guy. This is important stuff. So we brought Dominic Fonte of Dominic Fonte Associates in studio this morning, and we're going to talk about the housing market because I'm telling you, Dom, there's so many questions out there. I don't think people can have enough time to sit down with you and ask all the questions. It's because it can be very confusing, right?
It's very confusing, and unfortunately, we're only getting sound bites many times, and everybody's busy, so it's hard to dig in to see what's really happening. And I always say good real estate agents understand what's happening. Great real estate agents can explain and articulate the story of what's happening. And that's what I hope to accomplish for all you listeners out there today.
Yes. And of course, if you're watching us on Facebook, we are live on Facebook right now, go to our Facebook page, just like it, and you'll be able to check it out. This video will live on Facebook as well, so you can check it out at any time, and we'll share it, and we know you'll share it as well, Don.
Absolutely.
And people will be able to take a look at it. But before we get started in talking about the specifics of the housing market, talk a little bit about yourself. I want people to understand, where you're coming from and how long you've been doing this.
Right. So my name's Dominic Fonte with Cutler Real Estate, and it's Dominic Fonte Associates under the umbrella. And I have a couple people on my team, and I've been doing it. This is my 35th year, and I've helped over 2,500 families go through the process. And if you've ever been through the real estate experience, there's a lot to it. And there's a lot of us out there, but not all of us are created equal. So I think it's super important to make sure if you're dealing with a real estate expert, check them out online, make sure they're dialed in, because you only do it a couple times in your life. You want to make sure that you're not the guinea pig.
Yeah, and it's very scary. It can be very, very scary because most people don't know what to expect.
Absolutely. And on top of it, you're dealing with interest rates, economy, perception versus reality. And of course, there's just a lot of information out there. And I think the hard thing today is to try to parse through the information to get what's going to work best for you and your loved ones.
All right, so let's talk about the current real estate market. I mean, what are we looking at right now?
So what's your perception of the current real estate market? I would start with that first.
I guess my perception would be that houses are overpriced and people,
fair enough.
And that you're maybe I should wait because it just is really going to be tough right now to get something of value.
Right. Correct. So that's the perception. Also, the perception is maybe like 2008 when the market tanked. There's going to be a bunch of foreclosures. Prices are going to crash. Maybe we should sit on the sidelines. Not to mention the interest rates are higher, right?
Right.
And so maybe we wait and see what happens. So that's the perception, and I hear this awful lot. So in order to clarify, this is what's really happening. Now, keep in mind, when you hear the headlines, many times it's the national headlines, and that's great, too, to have a gauge for what's happening in the U.S., but I think you always want to kind of like filter it down or parse it down to where you live.
Yeah.
So it means a lot where you live. So let's say, for example, Pam, you live in Stark County. And so when you look at the national headlines, it says that the interest rates are touching 7.5%, right? Well, for a lot of people that had only been around in the market, say 7 years or so, they don't remember back in 81 when it was 18%, right?
Right.
But locally, what's happening is we only have 2 months of inventory right now. So 2 months of inventory. So what does that mean? So 2 months of inventory. So what that means is yes, the prices are higher now because supply and demand. So if you only have 2 months of supply, that means it takes 2 months for the absorption of that to go away. Now, in order for it to be a good balanced market, people want to see about 6 months of inventory, not 2. So we're about 4 months of inventory short. Now, if it gets to 6 months, then it's a good balance between the buyer and seller. And unfortunately, why the prices have been higher. And now, of course, the pandemic area is unusual. But if you go pre-pandemic, like 17, 18, and 19, and look at those years compared to now, it's normalizing a little bit. And really, I would say locally we're seeing about 3.5 to 4.5% appreciation, unlike it was 20% just a couple of years ago. So it's stabilizing now.
And what makes that inventory be two months as opposed to 6 months?
Well, I mean, obviously, nationally, it's 3.3 months, right?
Okay.
Well, so here's what it is. So think about the buyers and the sellers in the real estate market. So you have a lot of baby boomers that are like, say, 58 to 68 in that era. Then you have a whole bunch of millennials, which are 30-something. And when they were accustomed to student loans and trying to get their lives started, they were at 3%, 3.5% interest rates, right? Well, what happened was when those rates went up a year or so ago to 7%, it forced all of them out of the market because the Fed was trying to calm the market down because we had such a low inventory. Well, part of that was the builders weren't building as much as they were, for the last 14 years, since the debacle. They haven't been building as much, right? So that's number one. Number two is you got the 30-somethings that are all in the market to buy real estate. So there were way more buyers to buy than sellers, which is what created the drive on pricing. And since we couldn't magically produce a bunch more properties for sale to bring that average up, the Fed then raised the rates dramatically to calm the market down. And in order to change that, when you think about it, a lot of people have those interest rates that are, say, 4% or less. And if I were saying I have a mortgage at 4% or less and I'd like to move, but I'm not sure if I want to trade a 4% rate for a 7% rate. Yeah. So part of it is hesitation. Part of it is worry and economic. And when people are a little bit feared, what do? But they hit the pause button, don't they?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's a little bit interesting, but there's a lot of activity still happening. It's just like I said, an informed decision maker. As long as you're informed about what's really happening in your backyard by an expert or local professional, you will be able to actively move forward and be very satisfied with your decision.
Should we be afraid of something like 2008 occurring?
Well, here's the thing: if the system implodes, right, which we hope won't happen, but when you look at just the hard, raw numbers, and if anybody's ever interested in trying to understand this, you can reach out to me at 330-418-1535 or email me at dominic@dominicfonte.com. But the raw numbers are this, Pam. We have 4 months shortage of inventory. Now, when you think of the pandemic, that was kind of like unicorn years. That was something that was just not even normal.
Yeah.
But when you think of 2007, when the market started tanking, we had 10 to 12 months of inventory. Wow. So what happens is how do we get to 6 months of inventory? So we have 4 more months of inventory that we need to balance the market out. So the only way that could happen is if a whole lot of people decide to put their homes on the market. But what happens, what people are feared about is, let's say it's still a seller's market. So it's still favoring the seller. And so if I put my house on the market and it sells quickly, then I feel like I'm not going to get the house I want and I might have to settle. So people hit pause. So in order to overcome this objection, you got to get real creative. And I have answers to some of this problem to be able to help them move forward. Like, in other words, buy before you sell, because that's what everybody's worried about. I have to get the money out of my house, right?
Yeah.
In order to purchase a new home. So it's a catch-22. I can't really get my money out. So, and I don't want to be stuck with 2 home mortgages, because people remember 2007 and 2008, right, when it was bad. Mm-hmm. But when you look at statistics, we have 2 months of inventory. The lending practices are more conservative than they ever have been, and the foreclosure rate's lower than it's almost ever have been. So with those 3 factors, unless there's like a catastrophic event, it's not going to happen.
That's good to know.
It's not going to happen at all.
That's very good to know.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take our first break, and we will come back. We are Spotlight, a special Monday edition of Spotlight. Dominic Fonte of Dominic Fonte and Associates, and we will have more right here on 1480 WHBC.
Now back to Spotlight on 1480 WHBC.
And And good Monday morning, everyone. Pam Cook with you this morning on this special edition of Spotlight. And we're talking real estate. We're talking buying and selling homes. And, of course, we have Dominic Fonte in studio with us and Dominic Fonte and Associates. And, we were talking off the air about interest rates. And, the one thing that hit home with me is because I've kind of watched some of the younger folk in my family, go out and buy their first homes. And you were right. You were saying that, they put offers in on home after home after home and were so disappointed. And then finally overpaid for a house because they really just
got tired of it.
They got tired of it. It was exhausting.
It is.
And they love the house that they're in, but there's part of them that feels, we kind of overpaid for this, but we're here. And
it's all relative, honestly.
Yeah, it is. So talk a little bit about that and where interest rates are for people.
So here's the deal now. The rates, a lot of people are accustomed to 3 to 4% for like 10, 15 years almost after the debacle happened. And then in June, a year or so ago, it all of a sudden doubled and it went all the way up to 7 to 7.5%. And so the people, as the rates were climbing, there was the shortage of inventory. Remember, we were talking about that. Mm-hmm. It was less than 2 months, believe it or not. So you had all these millennials in the market. So I would say, just as an example, there's one house on the market and there's 10 buyers for one house. So your niece or nephew or relative, of course, is jumping into the marketplace and they're like, well, the rates are on the rise. We want to make a decision. And what is tricky about real estate? It's very expensive, very emotional. And then on top of it, you start feeling something towards it. Like, I like this house. I think this could be our house. And so like you ask your agent, like, what should we do? And they're like, well, they're asking X amount for it. So you're thinking, okay, well, we don't want to really pay full price, but since there's so much activity, we go ahead and offer full price.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, you hear there's 5 or 10 offers on the property and it's sold for $20,000 over.
Yeah.
And so you're like, well, wait, you didn't give me a chance to raise my offer. So now you're depressed. You lost out on this dream home you fell in love with. And so every house after that, you compare to the house you lost. Yes. And in the meantime, the rates are going up. So what happens? You get so frustrated. So I think that part of the problem is education is really important. And you have to understand, what are you dealing with at any given time when you get into the real estate market? So now things are calming down a little bit. However, since they raised the rates to 7.5%, instead of having 10 buyers per house, you have 3 buyers per house. So guess what? It's still like that, but not as berserk. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So people are still like, so it's location, condition, and price. If you have all 3 of those, I promise you it's going to sell for full price. Mm-hmm. And it's going to sell timely. But if you feel that, it's like it was a year ago and you don't want to prep the house and you want to overprice the house, yes, it'll sit on the market. But in general, since the rates went up so high, it took a lot of buyers out of the marketplace. So now who's making the move now, like 40% uptick is the 50-plus year old people because they have now equity and homes that are paid for. So they're financially a little better off and they're not quite as worried about the interest rates like, say, the millennials or the younger people, or if you have to get a mortgage. So if you can't put a huge down payment down or pay cash for it or a combination, then, you're going to step out. So, yeah, we're not seeing it as crazy, but it's still crazy.
Yeah. And that's, when you talk about like the cash and the down payment and all those kinds of things,
yeah,
that's something even more big to consider now.
Yeah. And, and a lot of times, when you're thinking about, like, especially if you're a younger buyer, you may not have a rich parent to give you money. So what are the assistant programs or community programs? So you want to talk to your expert to find out what programs are available so that you can get in the game. Because, like, honestly, the prices are not going to drop, So part of the problem is affordability nowadays. And in Stark County, it's like, well, these prices went up so much in the last couple of years. Well, the interest rates, if they come back down some, then you're golden because you marry the house. So you want to secure the best location that you could afford, even if the rate's a little higher, because the rates will come back down some. And when they do, you refinance or you have a preset plan so that you can go ahead and, adjust that according to your lifestyle and budget.
And you talk about equity. some people may not even really understand what that means.
Right.
And explain a little bit about that.
So in the U.S., now we're not talking Stark County. This is just across the board. The stats I just got for August, 68.7% of the U.S. population, 68.7. Now think of that number for a minute. Have either no mortgage or 50% equity. No mortgage or 50% equity. Think about that. So there's all the people in the U.S., which of course trickles into Stark County and the surrounding areas, that in fact they are solid, but they don't really know the mechanism in order to buy before you sell. And a lot of times it's slightly older people, maybe. There's a breakdown of the millennials, Gen X, Gen Z, and all that, which I don't have at my fingertips. But if you're interested, we can talk about that. But then on the flip side, so you got that, people with equity that are a little hesitant on what to do and how to do it. And then you have 70% of the population in the U.S. with a 4% interest rate or lower. And so now, you have a small percentage of people that are motivated to buy or sell. Yeah. And so that, in addition to the shortage of inventory, is why, things are a little bit off. And then the interest rates, which we can't control. So there is a way to access your equity and buy the home of your dreams and then sell your home. Now, a lot of times, if you remember 05, 6, 7, and 8, the economy kind of imploded and people got stuck with multiple mortgages. But with the inventory being at 2 months supply in our backyard, the risk factor is very conservative. So we can figure out a way, and I can explain that if you want to go down that path.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll go down that path after we take a break for the news here. And I also want you to explain the process for people.
Okay.
About, they're going to come to your office and sit down and then we want to know what happens after that. So we'll take our break for the news. And then when we come back, we will continue talking with Dominic Fonte on this Monday edition of Spotlight here on 1480 WHBC.
Now back to Spotlight on 1480 WHBC.
All right, 9:34 on your Monday morning, this special edition of Spotlight. And I will remind you that we are live on Facebook right now on 1480 WHBC. And Dominic Fonte in studio with me, Dominic Fonte and Associates. We're waving at the camera, smiling at you. You can come and see us just by liking our Facebook page. A little later on, he's going to get that on his Facebook page. He'll
Absolutely.
share it. And you can check it out. If you missed the first half of the program, you can go back and listen to the whole thing. We'd love for you to do that. And we were talking about equity and, some of these terms and things get confusing and people say, you were talking about being able to put your equity to good use and people say, okay, how do I do that? I mean, that's right. Can be confusing as well.
It is. So since nearly 70% of the U.S. population have no mortgage or 50% equity, a lot of times they're not sure how to buy a home of their dreams. So when you're competing with other buyers and they have to get financing, if you can make your offer look like a cash offer without the contingency. So in other words, I need the money out of my home in order to buy a home. So I can buy a home contingent on my home sale, right? Which in this market we're in, with it favoring the sellers and there's less inventory, they're not comfortable generally doing that. Yeah. So you will lose out and you'll be dissatisfied and frustrated. So the solution to the problem would be this. Call me. I'll explain it more in detail. But here's the point. You can do it two ways. So I work at Cutler Real Estate and we have a program called the Cutler Cash Advantage. Now what it is, it's basically we deal with a specific lender that will pre-approve you like you would get a typical loan. But they would convert your equity into cash so that you can actually be a cash buyer to buy a home with cash. And then after you close, then they reconfigure it properly. Mm-hmm. And this way here, you can be competitive in the marketplace and now compete with those offers that we've been losing out to.
I think that's genius.
It's a fabulous way to do it, and Cutler Real Estate offers this, and it's a wonderful plan. So in not every case, but in many cases, people are winning big with this without actually having the liquid cash. The second way I see to do it, and again, a lot of people, since they have so much equity in their home, a lot of times people have a home equity line of credit that's just open, and, maybe they're thinking of doing a home improvement. And then lo and behold, next thing you know it, they find a home and they're like, you know what? Instead of adding on and doing these extra things to my house, I want to buy this home over here.
Mm-hmm.
And they have, a couple $100,000 worth of equity in their home. They got the open line of credit. They technically could write a check like it's a cash transaction. Now, in 2007, people were hesitant because the market was different. We had 12 months of inventory. How many months inventory do we have?
2.
That's right. So that means that it's a very conservative risk. But however, when you're competing to buy that home of your dreams, because you can't, wait to sell your home and then settle for something you're not happy with. So of course you want to secure the home of your dreams first, right?
Yes.
Tweak it a little bit. Put your home on the market with a professional. My number is 330-418-1535. And then if it's like not enough equity to pay it off, you put a huge down payment down, and then you can recast your loan, which means for a small amount, and in some cases no charge at all, when you sell your home and you get the excess money, you plop it down on your mortgage of the new home. Because remember, you had the bigger mortgage. Now you put the lump sum down. You do what's called a recast. They recalculate the loan based on the smaller amount, and you have a small payment, even if the rates are a little higher, or you pay it off totally.
Yeah.
So it's a fabulous way to do it. It's just more like a GPS or headlights in the dark. That's what I am to you. I can walk you through that. I can guide you through the process. Not, like I said, the problem is there's a lot of us out there, and, it's just trying to understand it. And I've been through a lot in the last 35 years. There's been 8 real estate adjustments that were very painful, and I learned how to survive and thrive, and you get the benefits of that.
That's it. And listen, everybody has had to think creatively through
Absolutely.
this whole process, and that's a great example of that for sure.
Hey, you get lemons, you make lemonade.
That's right. Add a little vodka, and you're in good shape. No,
That's right. That's what we do, and I'm here to help you do that.
Yes, and let's talk about that a little bit too, because people are, and I talk about young people, older people, middle-aged, whatever age it might be. They say, I want to do this so bad, but I'm really nervous about it. I don't know how to start. So what do they do?
Okay, first of all, you want to work with a professional. So obviously I have confidence in my ability, but you may have a relationship with someone else. You want to make sure that someone else is dialed in and they understand your needs. Because what I always say to me and my team, what we do is we always put the customers or the client's needs first, because what I think might be best may not be best for you. So I always want to have a consultation first. So what we do is we meet. It's a 15-step process if you have to get financing. It's shorter if you need no financing. So I always like to do a needs analysis, like kind of a gut check to see what your wishes are. And then what we do is then we brainstorm through risk factors and what you're comfortable with. And then we kind of parse it down and formulate a plan that helps you execute your goal as soon as we can with the least amount of headache and the least amount of anxiety, right?
Yeah.
Because since it's emotional and costly, and I know we talked off air about a lot of your loved ones and relatives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was very emotional.
Yeah.
And tears come to the forefront.
Yeah, for sure.
When it's not managed properly. Keep in mind, there's just a lot of intricacies to it. And so like when I say headlights in the dark, when you're in the dark, you can't see in front of you unless you have your headlights, right? And you only see like 20 feet in front of you and then 20 feet in front of you. So you want to just make sure that when you're going through this, some agents might be more aggressive than others. I'm an advisor, like with the heart of the teacher, to guide you through the process so you make that informed decision. Because at the end of the day, how I get most of my business is through word of mouth or reviews. So a lot of people go to my website at DominicFonte.com. Matter of fact, I have over 430 5-star reviews to explain what you would experience working with me and my team. So I think it's super important to get dialed in with someone with the heart of a teacher to kind of walk you through step by step what's going to work for you, what's in your best interest. And then if it makes sense to you, then you say, okay, what's next step?
Yeah.
And then I take you to the next step without bugging you.
Right. And that, I think because if you are not with the right person, you end up being even more afraid, and not understanding what the process is or what you have to necessarily do as your part of the process. And then it can just turn into something not so good.
I mean, think about it like this. There's many real estate agents in the industry, but I promise you, they're not all created equal. And part of it is not by, them doing it on purpose, just they don't know. Mm-hmm. You don't know what you don't know until you know it. That's what I say.
What do you think that most people who come to you, what are they most afraid of, or what's the hardest part for them to grasp?
Making a mistake.
Yeah.
They don't want to make a mistake and hate what they did and regret it. So I have a philosophy, I always say, because like what happens with real estate, why it's so hard is because it's one of the biggest things that most people do in their life. And if you think about a 25-year-old to 75-year-old, you might do it 3 times. So it's not like buying a purse or a belt or a pair of shoes. It's like a big deal. Mm-hmm. And, you're committing to a longer term thing, a 15 or 30-year, process. And now the average time in a house is almost 10 years. So if you're stuck in a house for 10 years and trying to make a place for your loved ones, you want to make sure, since it is a little bit emotional and it's expensive, you're a little nervous about it. And guess what? Buyer's remorse is real. And so I have a philosophy and a system that we use to help you feel very confident that you're making a very logical, not an emotional decision. Now, however, what is real estate? I fall in love. That's an emotion. Mm-hmm. So what we want to do is we want you to logically make the decision based on your situation. It's not like we're going to Vegas and gambling away our retirement. We're being very strategic in what we do. And at the end of the day, you're going to be so happy with your decision, even though your anxiety might go up a little bit. We help keep that in check. I manage your emotions a little bit to help you get through it and baby step you through it, hold your hand through the process, and make sure that you're super satisfied. So at the end of your experience, you write me a 5-star review and you refer me to all your friends and family.
Would you say that choosing the house is the easy part?
Yeah, because then anxiety sets in at 2 a.m. Like, oh my goodness, did that have a bedroom? Did it have a laundry room? I don't remember even, what about the neighbors? What if we don't like the neighbors?
Do I have to fix the roof?
Yeah, what if the water heater blows out?
Yes, exactly.
So I think that's a lot of times what people think about, but honestly, I think it's important to work with an advisor, someone that's knowledgeable, someone that has a track record. So whoever you're working with, just check them out online, have that conversation of what your concerns are. And if you're not sure or not committed to somebody, my team and I are all trained up exactly the same with the same ethics, the same hardworking drive to make sure that we satisfy your needs within God's help, honestly.
Yeah, and Dominic's been doing this for a very long time, so he will make you feel very comfortable. I think that's the point. Is, that you sit down, you feel comfortable, and you don't feel like you're asking stupid questions.
No.
You know that you're okay with that
and
stuff.
I think the other fear is like, well, I'm not there, I'm not ready. This is what I get a lot. I'm not really ready. I just want to do it on my time, which is fine, because they're afraid that I'm going to call and bug them maybe, or bother them. And I'm a busy guy. I've been doing this a long time, got a lot of people I help. And I want to help you based on how you want to work. So you have no fear with feeling like, oh, geez, I'm going to, he's going to bug me or drive me nuts. Like they say, oh, he's like a car salesman. No, it's nothing like that.
Yeah.
I'm a professional. I've been doing it a long time. I understand personalities. I understand the fears. I understand what you're going to go through. I've been through it myself, so it's not like I'm talking without experience.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll take our final break right now, and we'll be back with more with Dominic Fonte and Associates. Don't forget, DominicFonte.com for all of your questions and phone numbers and location. And we'll talk more with Dom here in just a minute, right here on 1480 WHBC. Final segment of this Monday edition of Spotlight on 1480 WHBC, and a lot of good stuff that we have been covering in the last 45 minutes, 50 minutes or so with Dominic Fonte. And if you didn't have a chance to catch this, please make sure you check us out on Facebook. The video will live there, and Dom's going to share it on his Facebook page as well. But make sure you go and like our Facebook page also. And we always, this is such one of the catchiest things ever. And so I'm going to say it. And we love this. Dom, what's myhouseworth.com? Tell me what that is.
So basically, if you just go in your computer on your phone and just put in Dom, Dom?
Dom.
What's my
houseworth.com.
It's a landing page. So when you do that, you just put in your address, and it's an algorithm, right? So I got this plan where it gathers all the data around your property. And actually, people do it that want to sell one day, or they're just curious about value. Mm-hmm. It sends you a report automatically within like 30 seconds, a 20, 30-page color report of all the details. But the other thing I find people are using it for is, like, let's say, I like a particular neighborhood. And, and I find I just pick a random address in a neighborhood. And I do that because I'm curious what the values are in that neighborhood. Because one day I might buy there, or, whatever. So it works really well, and it's an algorithm. So I always say to people, if you want to go to domwhatsmyhouseworth.com, the landing page, and go ahead and put your address in, it'll send you a cool report. But if for some reason you're really serious and you say, you know what, I really want to know, like, have eyes on, because a lot of times people will say, hey, Dom, can you come out and just take a look and be honest with me? Give me the straight scoop. We may not sell, but we're just curious because we're doing some financial planning. A lot of people actually ask me to do that because they're trying to figure out their asset, even if they don't sell. But yeah, it's a great plan. Go to domwhatsmyhouseworth.com. Check it out. It's really cool. I'm not going to bug you. I mean, if you need me, just text me at 330-418-1535 or leave me a voicemail.
Very good. So now, is there a, I don't know, I don't really know exactly what the timing is on it, but is there any good time to buy or sell, or is that just kind of a myth?
Well, without, unusual things happening, with the economy and so forth, normally it's like seasonality. So if you look at a 12-month cycle, April, May, and June, for some reason, tend to be where more buyers and more sellers come into the marketplace. Typically in the fall is the best time to buy because some people pause and they're not in the marketplace, so you have a little less competition. Okay. So a lot of times the fall is a little better time to buy. But, it has a lot to do with your personal situation. If you lose your job and you have to sell, or your mom is going into a nursing home, or there's, some situation, no matter what the year is, you deal with it. And I'm there to help you walk through the process. But I would say April, May, and June typically is the part where a lot of people tend to think it's a better time, and school's getting out and things like that. But all year long, just Thanksgiving to Christmas, it's the slowest.
Okay, yeah, because people wouldn't tend to move during the holidays unless they were forced to, like, for
just
a
like
job
I mentioned.
transfer or something. Yeah.
Yep. And I've had, like, I remember one year I had 12 transactions in December.
No kidding.
Yeah. But again, it just has to do with a personal situation. Yeah. But in general, when it's right for you is the right time, regardless of time of year.
So talk about your location, where you're located, and phone numbers and all that kind of stuff in case, people want to get in touch with you, obviously.
So technically, I work in the Belden Village area at Cutler Corporate, which is across the street on Dressler Road from TGI Fridays. So it's right across the street. If you ever want to just send me an email and ask a question, you could just it's my name, Dominic, DOMINIC at DominicFonte.com. You can always text or call 330-418-1535. Or if you want to go to my website, go to DominicFonte.com. I have over 435 star reviews. Or if you're just curious, Google my name, Dominic Fonte. I have a lot of videos, a lot of content, a lot of good information. And, if you're thinking of buying, I prefer an in-person meeting. If you aren't comfortable with that, I do have like a YouTube process of the 15 steps. But in person's better because I think it helps you to kind of digest it and process it according to how you do. And then you just gradually baby step into the process. And if you want to sell, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll come out to your house and just look through and give you some suggestions and ideas. But a lot of times people will say, hey, Dom, I don't want you to come out because I'm doing this, this, and this. So I always say, call me before you do this, this, and this, because some things you can get away from doing. And so, I'm going to help you do the best, most efficient way to save you money. And then, if it's right, you do it. And if it isn't, now you're educated.
Right.
And an informed decision maker is a happy one from my experience.
And you know what? Meeting in person is the best thing, not only for you, with them,
Right.
but the other way around, because he's not going to chain you to a table or anything. It's not like that.
Don't be so sure.
But the point is, you want to meet him too. You want to,
Yeah.
see what he's like, and you can learn from him, feel comfortable, and make that process start that way too.
I know it's hard because it's a little abstract, but I think what's cool about being on the screen,
Facebook, yeah,
right, which is neat because then you can actually see. And
That's right.
I mean, I know it's not the same as in person. However, this is as good as it gets without calling me. And if you want to call and just try to see if it makes sense to you, no obligation. 330-418-1535. Call or text. Send me an email at dominic@dominicfonte.com, or just go to dominicfonte.com. Read some reviews. See what people were saying. My mom didn't write them, I promised. And there are a lot of reviews, and some people can't even figure out the computer to write me a review. But the reviews are important because I think it gives you a gauge of what you'll experience. And then if just for fun, if you want to try domwhat'smyhouseworth.com, go ahead and type that in and see what happens. But in the meantime, I appreciate the listeners tuning in today. I hope you gathered some good information. And if you have any questions, call me anytime.
Well, thank you so much for stopping by. We appreciate having you today.
Thank you. Be safe, everybody.